Good evening. At this time, I'd like to call the Ordinance Committee to order. Tonight is a joint meeting of the Ordinance Committee and Downtown Economic Growth. We are discussing Council Order 2016-267. This is an order relative to land disposition agreement, Parcel R1, the Hancock Parking Lot. Madam Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
Councillor Cain, Councillor Croall, Councillor DiBona, Councillor Finn, Councillor Harris, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Liang, Councillor Palmucci, Chairman Laforest.
Present. And our open meeting law, pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. At this time, I would like to call Mr. Bill Geary forward to the podium. This is the fourth meeting of the Ordinance Committee relative to this council order, and I would like Mr. Geary to provide an update as to where we've been the last couple of weeks in regards to this matter. Thank you, Mr. Geary.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman, through you to your colleagues on the committee and the council. Thank you all for your perseverance through this process. It has been a long process, and I must confess, certainly it's been a complicated process. There's been, as I said in prior testimony, nothing easy whatsoever about this. We're dealing with a number of state laws which are not easily interpreted. And in many ways, I've likened this to a trial. It's been a long trial. And a lot of testimony, a lot of evidence has come before the council, which is not easy to absorb. And I might also add, it's not easy for the press to interpret in the condensed version that it is required to condense some of the proceedings that occur here before the council. So I thought the most worthwhile and efficient use of our time at this final committee meeting on this subject would be for me to do a summation of some of the key points that have been made during the course of the four proceedings that have occurred. Our experts who have presented detailed explanations concerning the issues related to the LDA, the companion Section 6A agreement that's required under Mass General Laws 121A for payments in lieu of taxes, and that in many respects in and of itself is a bit of a misnomer. And I think it's important both for council and for the public for me to clarify some misimpressions that may have arisen through this lengthy process where people may not have had an opportunity to see all of the information that was disclosed and submitted to the council during the course of the last 2 months since it was submitted to the council. And finally, I'd like to thank the members of the council throughout this process. Each of you have been engaged. You've asked cogent questions. You've pursued your fiduciary duty to perform due diligence on the proposal before you, on the information that's been placed before you. And we in the administration do appreciate your devotion to that fiduciary duty, and that you play an important role as a legislative body for this city, and the administration respects that. And my experience in government over the last 40 years has been that when the executive branch realizes the appropriate role and involvement of the legislative branch and cooperates with that, the public gets a better product. The public gets a product that is the sum result of our joint efforts to fulfill our obligations to protect the taxpayer. And equally, I want to emphasize that as a public officer for the city, as is Mr. Fatseas and Mr. Stevens, we possess that same devotion to protecting taxpayers' dollar, to protecting the public interest, and give our zeal to making certain that when we are negotiating any agreement on behalf of the city that is going to come to you for review and approval, that we do so with that devotion to duty, the same devotion to duty that you have on the council. And of course, you're in a part-time circumstance, we're in a full-time circumstance, but I can say that over the course of this last 2 months, in interacting with each of the members of the council, your questions have been informative to me and informative to Mr. Fatseas and the planning department as to how best we can fulfill our objective to reinvigorate the economic engine of Quincy here in the downtown area. And so I'd like to start from ground zero. And ground zero really is that 13,526 square feet of the Hancock lot. That is a practical matter today, and for many years, other than a paltry amount of money for the 50 or so, 60 cars that are parked there periodically during the course of a day, a week, a month, a year, replace that with a project that is going to assist the city in really catalyzing the economic development downtown. Several members of the council who were present prior to the new councillors taking office at the beginning of this year went through the lengthy process with Streetworks. And subsequent to that process, there was a study that was conducted by real estate experts to give the city guidance on how it should proceed post Streetworks. And part of those recommendations were to increase the density downtown. And if you look at ground zero, Hancock lot, in putting together this proposal, what we've attempted to do is take a small of a chunk of that lot as is possible for the 15-story tower that's proposed, so that the bulk of the lot could be available for other developments that are prospective in the future, and that because they are not as dense as this, they will take up more of that ground, that valuable ground that we're talking about. And I know that the council has been indulgent in the sense that we only received the appraisal 2 weeks ago, and you've only had that period of time to review it. And there were reasons for that, a number of reasons for that, over and above the complexity of the model that was put together by our expert, Pam McKinney. And I know each of you had a little problem with that hypothetical. And I have to confess, in the open here, so did I. I had difficulty understanding the premise. And I had to undergo a tutorial by Pam and by one of our experts, Craig Seymour from RKG, who you've met, who's a certified appraiser, and Mr. O'Connell, the proposed developer. When the number was produced, he balked. He got a problem with it, and he's in the business. And so I have a more simplistic approach, befitting the fact that I have no expertise in this area, to looking at the appraisal. And I looked at the comps, the comparable properties. And for me, the first one that came readily to mind was 22 Mechanic Street. It came readily to mind because I was chairman of the planning board when we approved it. And so that was the first one I looked at. And it's contained in the appraisal that was conducted for the city by Alan Foster. And it discloses, and it's part of the packet, that the developer of that parcel purchased 26,155 square feet. Consisted of two components: a parking lot, and as we all know, it's literally diagonally across the street from the Hancock lot, and one home. And for 26,155 square feet, double the size of the lot, the parcel that we're talking in the Hancock lot, they paid $1,069,000, which worked out to be $31,441 per units for the number of units 34 that they were proposing. And you may recall that our hypothetical was 44 units. The other comparable, not far from Mechanic Street, is the site of the former Bethel Temple at the intersection of Hancock Street and Furnace Brook Parkway, and known as 1003 Hancock Street. In that instance, the developer purchased 94,000 square feet, 7 times as large as the 13,526 square feet we're proposing to dispose of. And they paid $2,090,000 and then had to demolish the temple that was on site. As incidentally, 22 Mechanic Street had to demolish a single-family residence that was on that site. And that's 53 apartments that works out to a per unit price of $39,434 per unit. Now we come to the appraisal that was done by Mr. Foster for our parcel subject to disposal. And I might add that neither I, nor Mr. Fatseas, nor anyone from the administration spoke to Mr. Foster during the course of his appraisal. He's a completely independent appraiser. He has previously done work for the city of Quincy during some of our prior activities. And so he went through his process predicated on the hypothetical that was put together by agreement between he and Pam McKinney and others as to what the market would bear. I might also add, in talking with prospective developers, we know what they want to build. They all want to build the same thing. But we're looking at the prospects for block upon block of the same looking buildings. If you drive through South Boston, you can see some of that on the side streets, on East First Street and some of those streets going there. A lot of them just look the same, and that's what the market has been bringing to us. This particular project that we're talking about is an iconic structure that we believe is going to be a magnet for development and is, as Pam said, going to be an anchor tenant for the garage. I think we've all agreed in our discussions here that that garage is an indispensable element for any future development that's going to occur here in the city. Those that are already proposed, as well as new ones, significant new ones that are on the horizon across the street in what had been the Ross garage area. So for that 13,524 square feet, the appraisal for the total land value came in at $1,965,500. So that's a little tiny bit less than the developer paid for a parcel 7 times as large, just 5 blocks away. From my standpoint, a lovelier location, and a block away, twice as much as the developer who developed that and paid only $1,069,000. Now, there's an offset to that 1.965, and that is that Mr. O'Connell had agreed to build at his expense a public park, which is part of the aspirational approach that we've taken to not only building up our downtown, but keeping it beautiful and opening up additional new spaces as best we can, when we can, how we can. And here was the way to do it. And he also agreed to, in the construction of that park, as validated by our consultants, Wood & Curran, intimately familiar with virtually everything that goes on that lot. Their estimate for the construction was $535,000. That's real money that the developer is going to pay and the city is not going to pay. The developer further agreed to maintain that park thereafter over a 40-year period, and both our Parks Department and Wood & Curran estimated the value of that over the course of 40 years for the type of park we're talking about would be $490,000. That would leave an estimated market value of $940,500 of the $1,965,500. That's all real money that this developer will pay. The issue's been raised, and it's a legitimate issue, as to why we didn't contemplate leasing the land. Well, we did. That was contemplated in the beginning, and there were several issues with that. First, the proposed developer is looking for a 40-year financing package from HUD. We'll be looking for a 40-year financing package from HUD. But to make the numbers work would require 99 years. But more importantly, from the city standpoint, it's almost like why the lottery gives people a choice of taking a lump sum or having it paid out over the lifetime. Why would the city not want to get its $940,000 as a lump sum up front, cash on the barrelhead for this piece of property? We don't want to repurchase that property. We don't want to preserve that property. We want to develop that property. We want someone who's capable of developing that property, develop it properly. And so it was in the city's best interest to look at not leasing the land, but selling it outright, selling it in fee. And that's why we made that approach as we did. We conferred, of course, with our experts, and they concurred that that was the best way to approach this. And we believe that we will receive, in the total financial package of $1,965,000, fair market value for that. I mentioned that Mr. O'Connell balked at it a bit. He conferred with his experts. He and I discussed these comps, because those comps gave him cause for pause when he saw, particularly the parcel where the synagogue was, essentially being so substantially larger than the parcel he would be acquiring under our agreement. And that's when he came back and talked to Pam at some length and to others, and he decided to proceed with the transaction. We all know that this has been going on for nearly 2 years. My experience in the year that I've been involved is that Mr. O'Connell has been always reasonable, and he's been a paragon of patience, because for a whole host of reasons, none of which incidentally have to do with the council, but had to do with legal difficulties that were left for us to resolve after the demise of Streetworks. And that's why I, along with an esteemed colleague, Bill Kennedy, from Nutter McLennan, he and I served together in Massachusetts state government. We wrote a lot of legislation together. We enacted a lot of legislation together. And I'm pleased to report that working once again, particularly with the city's legislative delegation, and the prompt action by this body in approving the home rule petition, our legislative delegation, led by Majority Leader Mariano and Senator Keenan, along with the other members of the delegation, were able to have this enacted by the legislature. And of course, the mayor, working directly with the governor and the lieutenant governor, was able to get the administration support to have it enacted into law. We needed to do that to overcome a whole host of challenges that essentially were going to prevent us from proceeding with the project, because there were wonderful tools that had been crafted in a prior law. Unfortunately, all those tools were relevant to Streetworks. None of them would be relevant to a new developer. But the opportunities we saw, and we arranged for Mr. Seymour to do a risk analysis, lost opportunity analysis, as to where we are today as a city vis-a-vis our development efforts and vis-a-vis the economic climate that we're in at the moment. We've had a good run since the recovery. We don't know how much longer that's going to last. And Mr. O'Connell and virtually all the other developers have been very uneasy about the prospects for interest rates to rise, which could jeopardize any one of these projects. So Mr. Seymour, I think, made a compelling case that to lose any one of these projects at this juncture, after it's taken us this long to get here, would be really an economic tragedy for this city and its aspirations to revitalize the downtown. The next issue that probably needs, or indeed definitely needs, to be addressed, particularly by our colleagues in the press, is to disabuse the public of any misimpression that in addition to paying $1.9 million to purchase this property, that somehow the developer is not going to be making payments to the city in lieu of taxes. Yes, there is an incentive for Mr. O'Connell to proceed with this project. And the incentive is to those who are taking the risk, rolling the dice. And that's what Mr. O'Connell's doing here. And I don't want to have him leave the table. I want to keep him at the table, but we've kept his feet to the fire. And as I said earlier, he's been very reasonable in terms of how he approached these negotiations as to what the needs of the city are. And we negotiated, as is required by the law, a so-called Section 6A agreement that has a formula for the payments that the developer will make to the city over the life of the 121A agreement, which will be 40 years, coinciding with the financing that he's seeking from HUD, and that those payments would constitute approximately 10% of all of the revenues generated by that project. I might add gross revenues, not net, gross revenues that project will generate over the course of its lifespan. And in the possibility, in the realm of possibility, that they are unable to make, it's a maximum of one or the other, unable to make the 10% payments, there is a floor. There's a minimum amount that they must pay, and that amount is calculated to ensure that the city recovers, that it covers its basic costs. Our whole approach to this was to make certain that at the very least, if everything went wrong, the city would be made whole. And at the very most, the city would prosper according to the prosperity of this project. And so we put together the formula. The formula was attached to 6A agreement. I hopefully emailed it to all of you over the weekend, but I do know from a couple of councillors that my attachment, they may have had difficulty opening the attachment. I asked the clerk of the committee, Ms. Manning, if she would make copies for your packets this evening so that you could see those schedules. And those schedules show, starting in year 3, that the in lieu of taxes payments are compared to what that same property would be paying in taxes ad valorem if the 48 units were constructed as had been in the hypothesis. And starting with the first year, under the ad valorem system, there would be a $180,000, $918 payment in ad valorem taxes versus a $251,785 in lieu of tax payment directly to the city. The next year, the 4th year, which is referred to as the stabilization year, that prior year projects 50% occupancy. 4th year is when it would be fully occupied. The rate under ad valorem would be $185,441 for that year. Under in lieu of taxes, it would be $412,476. And from there on, virtually every single year, assuming that there's no catastrophe, and you had to go to the minimum payment, the in lieu of taxes would exceed the ad valorem taxes. I might also point out that Councillor Palmucci and others called to my attention that at the beginning, 2017, there appears to be 3 zeros for each of those years as to payments. Well, 2017, that's accurate because we are projecting that this project would commence construction sometime in the fall. So basically, you're going to have a hole in the ground in the remainder of 2017, assuming they start when they're projecting to start, which is in September. However, for the next 2 years, when it's in various forms of construction, you will note there's a notation for $25,000. That $25,000, and I wish this was simpler, but that $25,000 is a so-called mandatory excise payment that the developer makes to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Revenue. And then the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Revenue conveys that payment to the city. So that in each of those years, the city gets that $25,000 payment, only it comes through the state. And it's just a idiosyncrasy of Mass General Law, Chapter 121. So I thought it important because I know, having had a constituent letter brought to my, or email brought to my attention today by Councillor Laforest, that this is a cause for concern, obviously, for each of you representing your constituents as vigilantly and vigorously as you do, but also for members of the public who are paying an increase in their property taxes, and they want to make sure that anything we're doing downtown doesn't constitute a tax giveaway. And the facts, the agreements will ensure that that does not happen. We also wrote into the agreement other items, once again under the rubric of ensuring that the city would be made whole if something happens, if there's what's called a capital event. If the developer were to refinance the building, all payments due to the city related to fees that were payable to the city, construction fees which are being amortized, would immediately come due. Just as if you're closing, all your taxes would come due. And this is enforceable by a lien, a city Quincy priority lien that has the same force as a lien on taxes. So it's a priority lien that would be enforceable against the developer should, for one reason or another, during that capital event, they were unable to make those payments. So that's the explanation with respect to the schedule of payments that are to be made. I'm hoping our colleagues in the press will feel free, and we'll provide them with copies of these schedules to publish them so that the public can see for themselves that the city is conducting itself in a responsible fashion to protect the taxpayers and to ensure future payments. Some of these, future payments in 2057, I don't know how many of us are going to be here to see that, but are projected to go to $1 million. And that's the economic bargain we see. We also foresee that for the time being, this is going to be the only 121A project we're going to do. At Councillor Palmucci's request, as you all recall, I produced a absolutely thrilling report on the nuances of MGL Chapter 121A and made recommendations that they're to be used sparsely. There may be other tools in this toolbox related to commercial development, and I know a number of you have expressed concern about commercial development, and we are currently working with Foxrock to attempt to fashion what will be a transformative commercial development in the area of the Ross Garage, and there will be tools that the state has available by way of iCubed funds and other funds that become available for commercial development, and 121A may play a role in that. I know in meeting with the Foxrock people, they had discussions about, for example, North Station, Boston. I'll call it the TD Garden. I'll always call it Boston Garden. But those kinds of incentives were utilized there because there was a public-private partnership. There's a public garage that's under the TD Garden services, both North Station and the garden. And I had been involved in my prior life in the Commonwealth on that project because it required substantial permitting from the MDC at the time because the walls abut the Charles River. And so I foresee that there's going to be a complex menu of tools that we will need to look at applying there. But all of our prospective developments really depend upon our ability to see this through, to get this underway. And finally, next to finally, the other advantage that Mr. Seymour outlined when he presented to the council several sessions ago was the cost savings and time savings we would be able to realize by having Mr. O'Connell designated as the overseer of constructing garage and other public improvements. We refer to it in the legalese as, the garage and other appurtenances. So those are the access roads, the egress roads, the public park, the sidewalks, relocation of water and sewer lines, all of which need to be done. And we will be proposing to do through DIF funding. And if it wasn't being done through DIF funding, it would be on the property base. So we will recognize significant cost savings and logistical savings. And once the law was enacted, we actually have met jointly with the company that's doing the preliminary design of the garage and the preliminary cost estimates. And we had Mr. O'Connell's project manager, Arthur Casey, and their contractor that they've selected, Lee Kennedy, who is, as we all know, a Quincy-based company, to work together on a design-build contract so that we can begin, and we actually, in our first session, identified a number of savings that could be achieved by having the designer and the contractor work together through the design process, foresee problems, and foresee pricing issues. So that's the kind of synergy that we believe that we're going to be able to achieve with that. And I think that's going to be very exciting for the city to have that approach to these projects. So with that, that's sort of the overview. I know you probably have questions. I might say the last point was, as I said, next to final, but then the final is the land disposition agreement itself. I sent each of the councillors last week copies, both black lined and blue lined, and in my cover memo, a brief summary of the changes that were made as a result of the review of this document by the council, special counsel for the city council, Mr. Shea. He had many excellent suggestions. We incorporated virtually all of them. I might add, including the city priority lien that I mentioned, which appears in several locations. I can certainly defer to Councillor Shea as to each of those, but they're called out in the blue line, and with that, I will conclude and be available for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Geary. That's a lot of information. I do appreciate you recognizing City Council Attorney Jim Shea in the audience. I did speak with Mr. Shea at the beginning, offered him an opportunity to give another update. He concurs with exactly what you said, that all of his concerns have been incorporated into here. He is available if any of our council colleagues have questions. And with that, Councillor Liang.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good evening, Bill. I appreciate you acknowledging our role in this process, and I do want to take a moment to thank you as well as our outside lead counsel, Jim Shea, the planning department, and of course the O'Connell team for all of your work on this. That being said, we have, like you acknowledged, received a lot of concerns from residents, and I think there are concerns that I and probably the rest of our fellow residents share as well, where it's, are we getting the best deal for this piece of property, of which we don't have much of. We've got this and we've got the Laforest. We have to be very mindful and very careful and do our due diligence to make sure that the project we're proposing is the best option for us. That being said, I know that obviously one option is to do nothing. Right now we have a parking lot that is open from 9 a.m. past 9 p.m., but there's a charge past 9 p.m. And I believe under an hour it's free, over an hour it's $3. At the max, I think it's somewhere over $15. So even at the max, you're making $15 a day per car, per spot. So that's the revenue we're getting right now if we do absolutely nothing. The other option which you guys have proposed here, and which Pam has done a thorough job in explaining to us, is doing the stick over podium, which is the 48 units, and get the revenue from that. And those payments are, like you said, in the first year that they actually do. So the occupancy, we're looking at about $180,000. And the third option is a project we're looking at. Now, if we look at that, the revenue coming in from that is $250,000 at its max. So we're looking at close to $100,000 more than we would receive if we don't do this project and we go with the second option. With that, there's another sheet that is very similar to the one that you are showing us. It shows those comparisons of a 48 unit versus this project was 124 units. And that shows in here the maximum direct annual payment to the city once it becomes fully occupied in year 4, which we are hoping will happen in year 4, is $412,000 minus the excise tax, $386,000 in payments to the city. At a minimum, we're looking in that full occupancy year at $228,000, and that includes a payment of what the project would pay into the garage.
Correct.
Okay, so that then leads me to the point of the garage and how that ties into this project. Now, we've heard multiple times up here that the garage can't happen without this project and the project can't happen without the garage. And the garage estimates are based off of $35,000, which is the average market rate cost to build out a space for an above ground garage. And that's what this number comes from. Now, we don't know that we've entered in or submitted or committed to a contract that says that this garage is definitely, no question, going to cost $35,000 per spot. So I know that, in that timeline, after we vote on this, we're still going to vote on and discuss the payment plan, and we're also going to vote on and discuss the garage. But that essentially means that the garage is still up in the air. So now let's say that it goes below market rate, and it costs us only $20,000 per space to build the garage. And we're making out because he's committing to paying based off of $35,000 per lot or per unit. But let's say we don't make out well, and for whatever reason, based off of the market in this new presidency, it costs us $45,000 to build out one space. Then we're losing out in the city because he committed to what is $35,000 per space, and we're paying $45,000. These are just numbers that I'm throwing out there. So to me, I can't get past that point of it and that piece of it where it's, we're basing this number, the minimum payment, off of what we believe is currently market rate, but we don't have an actual proposal signed in front of us that says you are definitely going to have to pay $35,000. We could pay less, we could pay more. So why are we not looking at that piece of it first and dictating and clarifying to both us and to the developer, this is how much the cost per space is going to be. So now we know, we can say for sure what those subsequent payments will be. Because right now it's based off of market rate and estimates, not an actual cost.
As I mentioned in our prior discussion, the developer is getting an incentive to roll this dice, to take this chance, to be the first one to come in. You are correct, and we had this discussion at the last session. The city will be presenting to the council a variety of options as to what the garage is going to look like, how many spaces it's going to contain based upon our best estimate of market demand, other factors such as traffic. And the first one in, and this is common throughout cities in the Commonwealth, and it's anticipated under 121A and 121B for that matter, that those who are the first in, who serve as a catalyst to subsequent development, they get an incentive. And so that's the incentive this developer is getting for that. And the city can charge, since this is a tenant, a anchor tenant, can charge other rates for subsequent developers. They're not going to be taking the same kind of risk. They're not going to be subsidizing the financing of the garage, as this project will be. That's why we want the density, so that they can subsidize the cost of the garage. So that's the advantage. That's the incentive.
Okay, so if that is the case, and we say this is based off of $35,000 cost to build the garage, our minimum payment, worst case scenario, is that we're still going to get, $182,000 at half occupancy, and at full occupancy, $228,000. Versus if we didn't do this project and we did just the 48 units, which they can just do here now anyways, we'd only be getting $185. So we're looking at more than what we would get even if they don't become fully occupied and we don't get those revenues. We're still looking at that minimal number.
Yes.
Again, that's based off of if we can get the garage built at $35,000 per space. And you said that they can't, that we can dictate what further rates would be for other projects coming down the pipe. Now, again, my concern, and I'm just going to repeat it because I want to make sure I'm clear here, is that this makes sense to me because we're making more and we're receiving more with this project than if we were to do the 48 units. But the open piece here that's still up in the air and not determined is the garage piece. So now if we get charged less and we come up with the cost of less than the $35K to build each space, that's great because we make out even more. But if it ends up being more, is there any way that you or the administration or somebody can say, if the garage cost ends up being more than what we predicted to create this number here that's going to dictate their payments to us, can we make up that cost with the other developments that will be coming down and then also leasing out space from us? Can we make up that cost through the other developments that are coming down the line?
That's what we will have to analyze as part of the analysis for the garage itself.
I understand we're analyzing, but what I'm asking you is if we're going to charge $35,000 per parking space to build, and that's the number we're getting here to determine the minimum payments to the city instead of taxes, and it ends up being more than that for us, then I would like to see that difference made up with us charging the other developers more for the parking space, because then we're not shelling out that money for an agreement that is not.
I agree. I'm sorry. I thought I made that clear.
Okay. I just want to make sure that that's what we're going to do, because we're committing to a cost that we don't know yet. And if we're committing to $35,000 per space and it ends up costing us more to build, I want to know where we're making up those costs.
That's our intention.
Okay. And that leads me to my second question, which has to do with the property itself. We keep referring to 13,526 square feet for the actual property size, and we keep referring to, the cost of that specific size itself, and it's $940,000, which equals about $70 a square foot. In going through this, there are 4 different easements that we're providing for this project, and those 4 separate easements total to be 32,000 square feet. So, I'm sorry, 18,000 square feet. So, the project is 13,000 square feet. We have 18,000 in easements that we're giving in addition to this property. We're not asking for payment for that additional square footage, but it's essentially the same size as the project itself. So are we getting payments for that additional square footage?
Some of those easements are exclusive, and I forget exactly which ones are exclusive, but most of them are shared. I mean, they're sidewalks, and there's portions of driveways which will be shared by other members of the public.
So, with all the information you gave us, which is substantial, and I appreciate it, looking at these easements, one of them is, in fact, the sidewalk in front, and the description does dictate that the developer is going to be responsible for building up that space and for beautifying that space, and that's going to essentially be the access point to the property. So that's one piece. That's parcel 4,801 square feet. So that part I understand. Surface easement B, which is 6,000 square feet, is going to be behind the property, and that's all going to be loading for, I'd imagine the trash for the project, as well as, trucks coming in and out for deliveries and whatnot. For C, though, it's 2,444 square feet. That's going to be parking for the project. It's
going to be parking that's for the retail uses that are contemplated to be present in the building on the ground floor for them to park in and out. Okay. And then easement D is going to be another 4,000 square feet, and that's going to be just for space for cars to come in and out. Correct. Again, that totals 18,000 square feet of easements in addition to the 13,000 that they're paying us for. What are we getting for the 18,000 square feet that we're giving to this property other than a loading unit, a couple of parking spaces, a drive-through, and a beautified sidewalk? What we're getting is the project. Once again, there are incentives that are attendant to this first project, and we believe that the fair market value of 1.9 is fair market value for the easements as well as the tower itself. Okay, maybe I misunderstood, but you just said that the money that we're getting for
the project is based off of the 13,000 square feet of the property and not those easements.
Yes. We do not value the easements as part of that because we believe that between the exclusive easements and the public easements, that this is a fair, for the whole package, this is a fair sum for us to be asking for that property.
I mean, the 4,000 square feet of frontage and sidewalk, you know, they're maintaining that, and it's going to make our city look nicer and really clean up that area. I mean, I'm familiar with that area. I've seen people, I've worked until 2 a.m. in that area before, and I've seen that area dark and dilapidated, and you know, if somebody else is going to come in and beautify that space, I'm happy about it. The back loading zone, I understand, you know, with that size of the property we're having, you need a larger space to have in and out of dumpsters and all of that. Right. So the 2,444 square footage that we're giving to them for parking, again, we're already working on the garage aspect. To then give away the 2,000 square feet, which again, right now we're looking at getting $70 a square foot. Why couldn't we charge $70 a square foot for parking that they're going to get for their project? It's 18,000 square feet in total we're looking at here that we're not charging $70 a square foot for. And it's valuable land. Like you said earlier, this is valuable land, and we have to maximize its use. But there's 18,000 square feet, let's say minus the 5,000 for surface sidewalks and the 5,000 for the loading zone. So 8,000 square feet that we're not taking advantage of, I think, as far as giving them an easement for that versus asking for a payment for it.
We believe the amount that's been appraised is adequate for that piece of property in that project, that development. We have to provide, if we want to promote mixed use, we want to promote commercial activity on the ground floor, we decided that we needed, the people aren't necessarily going to go to the coffee shop. They're not going to want to go into the garage if they're going to go to this coffee shop. They want to park and run, as we all do, run in and out of the coffee shop, you know, for the 5 minutes that it takes. And that's an amenity, we believe, for the citizens of the city to have that kind of free access to parking opportunities in the commercial downtown. We've attempted to increase the number of public parking spaces on the streets through the process that we've been involved in for the last year.
So if that's the case, and I apologize for cutting you off, but you had just mentioned that that's going to be for public benefit and is going to, you know, ensure that that additional 4,000 square feet of retail is going to be more appealing and more attractive because now we have additional parking spaces. Right. Is there any way we can guarantee that that will only be used for public parking and that residents aren't going to have, you know, friends and family come and stay overnight and utilize? If it's snowing out, then, you know, and I live in that unit, I might want to just park right out inside.
We believe we have agreed with the developer that it needs to be controlled spaces so that you don't. So
they are going to be controlled and used only for residents to come and use the space and
yes.
Go to the retailers. Are there going to be signs that dictate that, or are people going to get ticketed for parking there?
It will be through signage.
Okay. All right. I mean, again, you know, my hesitation coming into this largely had to do with the piece of the garage. The payments that we're getting, I break this down to 2 forms of payment. And like you said earlier, you know, you want to get away from the misunderstanding of us giving anything away. I see it more like, what are we getting? It's one option versus another. What are we getting as a city? One option is to, again, build as is, 48 units, and we're looking at first year, what did you have here? 180,000 at full occupancy, versus option B that we're discussing tonight, and at the least, we're getting 182,000 at half occupancy, 228,000. 228 is much more than 180, and that makes sense to me. Except that minimum 228 is dependent on the garage, which we, again, have not finalized yet. So, again, just to clarify, you can commit to myself as well as my fellow councilors here tonight that this minimum will be guaranteed even if our cost exceeds $35,000 and made up by subsequent developments coming down and making up for that cost. We're not going to let subsequent developments come and say, well, you gave it to the O'Connells for $35,000 a space. I want it for that amount as well. I would ask you to commit to letting them know that, again, we are taking a risk with this project, the development's taking a risk with this project, and that's why they got the incentive to pay at $35,000.
Correct.
Every project that comes after that will have to pay more than that.
Correct.
Again, to make up for any discrepancy here in that number.
Correct.
Okay. That's it. Thank you. And thank you again, Jim and the planning department for your help on this. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to do a brief recess of the ordinance committee meeting to open and then subsequently recess the council meeting as we're up against 7:30. So please stay tuned. All right, good evening, everyone. This evening is Monday, January 23rd. It is about 7:35, and we are here in the Great Hall. Madam Clerk, if you will call the roll of members, please.
Councillor Cain. Councillor Croall. Councillor DiBona. Councillor Finn. Councillor Harris. Councillor Laforest. Councillor Liang. Councillor Palmucci. President Hughes.
Here.
9 members. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And if you'll all stand, please, and join me in a moment of silence for all those serving here and abroad and their families this evening. And please face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, if you will read the open meeting law.
Pursuant of the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting, or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible.
All right. All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. We will start with the first agenda item. It's actually the only agenda item listed, so we will just go through the why not Council Palmucci. Madam Clerk?
Number 1 on the agenda, 2017-014, a gift of $75 from various donors for crime prevention.
All right. Is there a motion to accept the gift by Councillor DiBona, seconded by Councillor Finn? On the motion, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Councillor Cain. Yes. Councillor Croall. Councillor DiBona. Yes. Councillor Finn. Yes. Councillor Harris. Yes. Councillor Laforest. Yes. Councillor Liang. Yes. Councillor Palmucci. President Hughes.
Yes.
8 members.
Great, thank you. All right, that will end our formal agenda this evening, and right now we will recess the regular council meeting, and Councillor Laforest will be up to go back into our ordinance committee meetings. All right, thank you. Yep. At this time, we'll reopen the ordinance committee relative to Council Order 2016-267 relative to the land disposition agreement, Parcel R1 at the Hancock Parking Lot. We concluded with remarks from Mr. Bill Geary. At this time, the floor is open to councilors for any final questions or comments. Councillor Finn.
Thank you. Again, I would just like, if we could, to hear from our council, Mr. Shea.
Good evening.
Again, one of the big concerns that I've always had, particularly why I appreciate the mayor's agreeing to have independent counsel for these particular agreements and the like, is that, again, obviously the level of complexity with some of these things is pretty enormous. And again, one of the things, the concerns that I've had from the beginning are always that, what are the conditions that exist with the land disposition agreement. It's very different than the last one that we had that offers certain protections in the event something goes wrong, but then also has it clearly spelled, given the fact that this particular land disposition agreement is precedent to a set of other contingencies moving towards closing, that defines what we do or what we're responsible here for as a city council and to what level we're engaged in that discussion. Could you talk again about those specific issues? I know you did bring it out at the last meeting, but what the difference is in that amended land disposition agreement that we have presently?
Well, the three major points that I made, whether the last meeting or the meeting before, was first that I wanted to clear which future steps after the land disposition agreement is executed come back before the council. Some of them were not explicit, some were kind of implicit. I think it's always simpler to make it absolutely clear. And those clarifications have been made, and that is that they have the bond authorization for the garage has to be approved by the city council. The parking lease has to be approved by the city council. And actually, I might add, I don't know if in terms of the discussion that went on earlier, I mentioned to Mr. Geary that I think that in terms of the cost of the garage is important, but I think even if it's higher than the projection or the pro forma, it's still shared in the same 20% to the developer and 80% for the city. So it isn't. I don't believe it's capped at that 35,000 per space. So that's good. You still want it to be a reasonable number, but so you'll be involved in that discussion. And the next thing was that the affirmative obligations, there'd be some security for them. Like, for example, maintaining the park going forward, and basically, as I think Mr. Geary mentioned, that if somehow there's a failure, and that's important, of course, you have to have the maintenance of the park is almost more important than having it, because if it's not working out well, it's an eyesore and there are safety issues. But basically, it's very clear that if there's a failure in maintenance which no one expects, the city can perform the maintenance and charge back the developer, and those costs will be the repayment of those costs will be secured by a first lien on the tower. That is a lien ahead of all debt. So again, I think those things were addressed.
Those were some of, by the way, issues that the council had raised. Yes, various councils had raised its concerns about. Right, correct. Okay. The other thing that's interesting, specifically, is that again, in the earlier land disposition agreement, that was, for lack of a better term, kind of this wholly, totally integrated package that didn't work. This is different in the sense that there are these certain contingencies that follow the LDA that have to be completed to allow this developer to get to a closing. So there is some risk inherent in that for the developer, correct? And in terms of this stands towards doing an ordinary market rate project. I'm going to ask you this because it goes back to the earlier one, and I'm not going to channel him this evening, but the late Councillor McNamee, if you remember, it was interesting once we had finished the last land disposition agreement, and at the end of it all, just before we were getting ready to vote, one of the things that he said was, "Oh, Mr. Shea, Mr. Shea, now I'm not an attorney, which is how he used to introduce a lot of these different things. He said, I'm not an attorney, but I want to ask you, is this a good deal for the city of Quincy? So remember that, correct? He said, is this a good deal?
What did I say?
And what you said back at that particular point in time was the market will determine whether or not this is a good deal, essentially. And so that we're not here necessarily to determine if it's going to be a good deal, but what's important, if you're asking me that in the event that this doesn't work out, does this particular land disposition agreement protect the taxpayers of Quincy, then it's a very good agreement. So I guess the question I'm asking you here this evening is in that same way, does this, in your opinion, does this specific land disposition agreement that we're entering into protect the taxpayer in the event, for whatever reason, some of the things that the agreement are conditioned on fail in a way that would keep the city whole?
Well, again, to parallel the previous agreement, when I came in after it was ordinarily negotiated, but I was concerned. One of the big concerns, and my memory isn't as good as yours, but was the 6A payments were higher than regular taxes. And the city in that deal was going to finance the infrastructure with, in effect, pledges of those 6A payments. So I was concerned that that agreement was terminated. Normally, you like the 6A to go away because it's a break on taxes. That was a situation where the developer was paying more than regular taxes. You could be left holding the bag. So we fixed that among other things. In this one, again, this isn't really a master land disposition agreement. It's basically for the first parcel in the Hancock lot. Here, as I mentioned the last time and maybe the time before, I wanted to make sure the use restrictions stay in effect because a lot of the I don't know, subsidies aren't a good word, but a lot of the thing is to make it economical to build what otherwise the market wouldn't bear. That is a high-rise steel frame construction. I wanted to make sure that if things didn't work out, that somehow that could be wiped out, whereas a lender could say, well, that didn't work, so now we've got to throw out that restriction. And we made sure that stays in effect for 40 years. So you're not in a situation where you provided benefits to get the higher density and the higher rise, but don't end up with something different.
And so you're convinced, again, this particular agreement does protect those restrictions moving forward.
I do.
Right. Well, thank you very much. I think that's pretty much what I had. I think, again, contrary to my behavior up here at some point in time, I really do believe in kind of a strong mayor model of government. And at the end of the day, specifically, it falls on the mayor and the mayor's office around negotiating this particular type of agreement. And it becomes very difficult to imagine that we could ever negotiate that wholly through a legislative body per se. But what we do have is the opportunity to decide, is this a good deal or a bad deal, and what do we feel that we need that protects people moving forward. And each person, I think, has to go and vote how they feel about that. I just want to remind everyone that it's been about 2 years that we've talked about this, and I think specifically with Mr. Geary coming on at that particular point, in terms of even getting to the point where that URDP would allow us to do anything, took a great deal of work on the part of their office and on part of this body, quite honestly, in negotiating that, and in good faith. In that process, particularly as it applied to land disposition agreements, they made certain that this body would be included in that particular process, and they have kept faith with that. As far as this one particular deal goes, I mean, I think often there might have been ways I might have done it differently, but I'm not the mayor, bottom line. despite moments of grandiosity where I think I might be. But the truth of the matter is that that one fact we can say is that if we do nothing there, we're going to get nothing, bottom line. And so as this particular proposal goes forward, and again, I know many of you may still have certain questions that you need in terms of making your own vote, but I'm going to support it. I think that the whole premise that it's based on is simply that if we want the type of building that we want, and I think that's always been part of the core component, it's clear-cut that can't happen under market conditions. And so what it requires some type of agreement that is essentially incentivizing a developer who's willing to take the risks associated with moving forward with this. And I think we're right now in that particular situation. And I think that the purpose of this agreement serves us well in the sense of protecting that what we hope to achieve there is achieved. And again, we're not ever going to get to that perfect agreement at this point, but I would want to remind people is it's still a number of steps between now and to the closing time in terms of even this particular project. We can't get to those issues are to that point in my mind without moving this forward. And so, I'm of some level of confidence, again, knowing that only time's going to tell if it works, but knowing that we have worked on our work enough to ensure that there are things in place, hopefully, to protect taxpayers. Finally, I just want to say, because I hear this all the time in relation to it, and I know, particularly in the last couple of weeks, the impression is though there's nothing of value coming back from a developer, or that this is somehow being represented as a giveaway. I think particularly given the market risks associated with doing this is really, truly a misrepresentation of what's going on. The last thing I would also say is that after the whole move away from the master developer and that concept, the whole idea has been about utilizing the public lots to attract other development. And if you remember, in those situations where we can't win, there's, west of Chestnut, which I think is a fine, thing that's being started to be built out in some regards, but everybody said, well, wood structures, we don't want wood structures downtown. We want this particular type of building. And so this is putting into place that very reality. And it represents in many respects, and I think this is true as an anchor, to hopefully draw additional people to commit and to invest, but hopefully on the commercial side. And I'm happy to hear that they're engaging that entity again in relation to talking about the strategies for that. And I travel, I'm not a developer, obviously, and I've never felt more above my pay scale, so to think, in terms of some of these issues, as I've noted before. But the one thing I can note is that when a person of the character and nature and her reputation of Pam McKinnon basically says, this is a very good deal, I have to take that very seriously. I think it is. And I think she believes, as well, as she's represented up here, that this serves the very catalyst that we're trying to talk about. Hopefully, I think there's no one here who wouldn't want to see that happen. If it doesn't, and if there's problems along the way, I do believe that how this has been structured in the land disposition agreement will serve the city well. So with that, I thank you, Madam Chairman. Again, I want to congratulate your work and Councillor Liang's in terms of however it goes, but in terms of the process that you've laid out for here. But I also want to thank Mr. Geary, whom I'm sure I might have even been able to call in the second quarter of the Patriots game to ask some arcane question about this, and he probably would have picked up the phone and answered it. And with that, I just want to hope I hope my colleagues will also support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Finn. He was answering my emails quite immediately prior to kickoff. Councillor DiBona.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I want to concur with Councillor Finn on a lot of things that he just said. I want to take a step back and have a couple comments before I ask Mr. Geary about a few questions. And I want to take a step back of last year, before stepping into office here in January. The West of Chestnut was just being built, and the structure of steel was being put in. And Councillor McNamee, God rest his soul, basically handed the ball off, the football off, to say, here, run with it. I did a little research on West of Chestnut. There's 169 units. Well, right now, as we speak of today, 78% of that is rented out and leased. So 133 units of the 169 is already leased out right now. And I called and I said, what are you getting for different clientele? And they say, well, all different various clientele, couples, singles, millennials, a wide variety of people coming to the city of Quincy. He also said there was people from the city of Quincy that want to live in the downtown. So there is a need for it. On Sunday before the Patriots game, I went over to Cleveland Place for the very first open house. The Galvin brothers, the 28 units that are already built, and then there's other 28 coming in. I was over there for about an hour and a half. I could not believe the amount of people that were going through there to look at these units, or one unit that they have, the model unit that they have. They already have 6 under agreement before the open house. So I feel to myself, there's a need. There's a need out there for these luxury condos, for the apartments. This kind of leads us into the third phase of this, which is basically Chestnut Place, the O'Connell building, which is going to be a separate entity in itself, a luxury apartment building that's going to coincide right next to the West of Chestnut, in a parcel that nothing is being used right now for about maybe 40 parking spaces right now. That's what's going to take out. And then what goes hand in hand with that is the Hancock lot, the garage. I always take note as to how these moving parts are moving along and what's going on the outskirts of it. How are we setting this up? Are we doing the infrastructure improvements around the city, around the URDP, around the DIF district? And we are. Because as Mr. Geary said in our last 3-hour tour on our last meeting, that the Ross Garage, the Ross lot, has 235 parking spaces, Fox Rock Properties, which should be the major players if and when this is approved to take on R2 and R3, which in my personal opinion, we're looking for the commercial end of this. And those will be 2 parcels that you'll see a significant amount of commercial space. Not to mention what's going on right now, since the weather's so good out there, is behind the courthouse, Galvintron, which is the Galvin brothers, also have the parcel over there that they're working on straight commercial real estate. And because the weather's so good, they've been able to get a foot in the ground over there. And if you drive by it, you'll see that it's being built. So things are in motion around the district that coincides with this. I always think about the law of physics. One without the other is nothing. And this is another portion, another piece of the puzzle to keep this going. Now, as Mr. Geary said before, we had the street work scale. It was put in front of us. It didn't work out. We lost about 3 years of time. We've been talking about it, as Councillor Finn says, for quite a while here. It's time to move forward. It's time to move forward with the downtown development and making this happen. All my life I've lived here, and we haven't done as much as we should with the downtown. And now we get to the situation, we get to the point where we're going to make the point to do the development, and you say, oh, well, these are all 3 of the new structures that are being built, that are going to be proposed to be built. have a level of differenceness to them. The 169 units in West of Chestnut's different. The Galvin Brothers with the Cliveden Place is condominiums. Do you want to buy down here? Do you want to rent down here? And now we're going to the next step. We're going for a luxury apartment. Another new thing that can give us profitability into the DIF district that will allow us to prosper. Also, I may note that because of these buildings being built, other restaurants are coming on board now. 16C has taken a foot before this development kind of happened and said, we're going to place ourselves right here, right next to Alba. The Ziv Chili Raw Bar, which is brand new, just got opened. Inside the West of Chestnut, you've got the West of Chestnut Fuji. You also have the K80 Burgers, which I've eaten, very good. You're going to look at the Cafe Gelato, which is going to go in the West of Chestnut within the next month. Something you may be able to bring a family to, bring some children down to the downtown. You're talking about coffee places. We need a wide variety to cater to the people. And then I talked to a lot of people who are moving to the city of Quincy, and they're saying, you guys are developing, I want to bring not only my wife, but I want to have a family here in the city of Quincy. Because you have good schools, you have good public safety, you put money into the police and the fire. That's an attraction for me. I see the potential of the Quincy Center. And I think it's our duty as councillors to make sure we do our due diligence with making sure it's the best deal, but at the same time moving the city forward. The ball was handed off to me last year. Came into the situation with a variable. What are you going to do about it? I always said, we've got to get this downtown development going. And I always used to say to even Madam Chairwoman, we're moving too slow. Can we speed this up? And I think we're right where we need to be in the process. We're right where we need to be. The interest rates are starting to climb, and the developer wants to get on and move the city forward. These aren't people from the outside. These people live in the city, they grew up here, just like myself, and we want to invest into something that they also live in. They aren't investors from way outside or developers from way outside. These are people that grew up in the city of Quincy that want to invest into this city, the right development. And I look at that like, that's an important value to me. That they live here too, that they invest into the city, they want to make sure that these are the right structures that are going into the city that they want to continue to live in, raise families. I just think that we've heard a lot of good things tonight. We've got a lot out of the due diligence of the work that you've done. It's going to lead me into my two questions that I have, Mr. Geary or anybody else that can answer this. I want to talk a little bit about the parking garage that coincides with this. Now, it's proposed to be 650 to 700 parking spots. We currently have 500 parking spots. And we've talked a little bit about this. I didn't know if you could tailor up on this. How many parking spots do you need for the 124 units? And is that going to be structurally built so where all of those residents will park in that parking lot?
The Chestnut Place project calls for 126 parking spaces. It's a 124-unit building. The parking spaces for that building will be underground and adjacent to the building.
Okay. The 126, does that add to the 650 or 700, or is that part of that?
Right now, it's part of it. You may recall that we did have the discussion last time, and we talked about a range of 600, 650, or 700.
Sure.
And part of the review that is underway is to make a determination based upon the factors that I recited as to what will work best. And it's anticipated that the parking garage on the Hancock lot side, in addition to being a garage, as I think I've mentioned in prior testimony, will have a public space attributed to it, so that we're welcoming people into that space. It doesn't become a dark space next to a garage. We all lived through the Ross garage experience, and as councilors have brought out, mentioned before, that's been a problem with municipal garages around the country, not just here in Massachusetts or the city of Quincy. So we think it's important to invigorate that area, to enliven it, to bring people as a destination. And we believe that that's going to enhance that, the developments that you just talked about. I happened to mention to Councillor Liang last Thursday night, I was working late here, and I was quite tired, and I, decided that I was going to go grab a bite to eat at Alba's, which I did. I went into the new place. It was great. And I decided to get a little fresh air, and since it was a pleasant night on a Thursday night, I walked up Hancock Street, and I looked at, the Alba's on both sides, the new place and the traditional place was packed. I went by the hamburger place, KK's, and it was filled. And something that struck me, it was filled with young families and children. I mean, there were children in there, and this was like 8:15 or so. And I went by Fuji. Every single seat, every single table was taken. And so I decided to cut through the alcove of West of Chestnut to check out the Fat Cat. Likewise. Then I went around the corner to 16C. Likewise. And I got a free parking space with the old Ross on the sidewalk behind, through the alleyway there. And so I peeked in at Iron Furnace, and that place was packed as well. So everything we're attempting to accomplish here is to do just as you said, is to energize this area, make it a destination. It's I think, a wonderful step forward, and development that is going to occur is in anticipation, that type of development. It's in anticipation of there being a garage, of there being more residents, more commercial activity, and particularly more commercial activity. And I think many of them see that as a positive prospect. And that's what's going to bring more people in and help us reinforce the commercial types of activities that we're trying to encourage here in the downtown. I might also mention on this project, Mr. O'Connell committed himself to making this a union job. Of course, it's high-rise steel construction, so as a practical matter, it has to be union work. But also, the law that was enacted that allows the city to designate redevelopers to undertake some of these public works. That law requires that all of those projects be prevailing wage. So you will see that type of economic benefit coming to the construction workers of our city and nearby communities.
You answered my second question. I was going to say, how do you protect their first C and talk a little bit about the prevailing wage, which you elaborated on. I'm very optimistic that this is going to work out and move the city forward. I've been waiting for this for a long time. We all have.
Yes.
I thank you for your hard work.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to this garage. I'm looking forward to the two parcels, R2 and R3, being the commercial real estate that we strive to need. That Fox Rocks maybe will be the player in this, as well as the hospital and the medical use. But as you see the pieces of the puzzle kind of getting together here throughout the DIF district, around the URDP, then we go up to the hospital area. It's all the pieces of the puzzle. The law of physics is all without the other. It's nothing.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Matt. I'm going to be in support of this as well.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Croall.
Thank you. Excuse me, Madam Chairwoman. It's been a long conversation. It's spawned itself over several meetings. I know Mr. Casey has been in attendance. I'd be remiss if I didn't at least offer you an opportunity. I don't know if you have anything else that you wanted to add. And I know that you come to the meetings. It's okay if no. No? Okay. Oh, geez, identity mistake.
My name is Arthur Casey. I work for the O'Connell Companies. I like the direction this is going in. I think it's the intention of Mr. O'Connell to produce exactly what he said. If anyone has any questions, I may be happy to answer.
I don't. I just, like I said, you've been here throughout, and I wanted to at least extend the opportunity for you to say something. So that's thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Geary and Mr. Fatseas, if you'd be so kind, and do a combo. Just to kind of recap, because again, I'm one of these guys. I'm a reflective thinker, so I take what we share when we're in deliberation, and obviously there's always information that comes out of every discussion, and I like to kind of tie it back to where we started, and I know that both of you have been in various roles throughout the process, both on the planning board now as a council, and both in the administration now as a planning board. So we've been through several iterations of the URDP. Pretty accurate, right?
Yes.
And the URDP was, yeah, right. And essentially the URDP was, the guiding set of principles or the guiding documents that, in my mind, this is the way I visualize it, set up a systematized process for downtown, which essentially had, a flashing light, attention developers, this is where we want to build. And what I was trying to dig back into the catacombs of my brain and figure out was, when was this set up? Was that 2005, 2006?
When the mayor's administration started, we were visited prior to the election, prior to the inauguration in November. Once the election was settled, Streetworks came up to meet with the mayor and myself and Mr. Walker. And they started to lay out their plan. So we're going back some time on this. But the concept predates us. The Great Quincy study was done in 2006. One interesting point, the financial analyst on that, the Quincy plan, was Cain. And Cain came along again, and the red tape people came for us to help us out the street work. And then after that plan had been presented to this council and to the mayor, we were very fortunate to be able to reach out directly to Cain and ask her to please come to work on behalf of the city. So it has been a long time. It's been 9 years. At minimum, a little longer than that. With many iterations, many conversations with this council, many different councillors actually over that period of time. But the one driving, vision was something had to be done in Quincy Center. There needed to be changes. And so we listened to the experts, to Clancy, obviously, Streetworks. Streetworks have a great value to the city, and give them some credit for that from a planning perspective. Then finally, when the red tape folks came in, they were pretty straight with us. They said, this is what you can hope for. And, you and I have spoken before on the different lots. They eventually said that if the city was going to proceed, we should go ahead at the Hancock lot, where the Ross lot was the harder lot, which is what we were asking Streetworks to do, because we agreed Hancock was tougher. Hancock was easier. Now the city is taking advantage of that. It's easier to develop a lot that did not have a decadent parking garage on it. So we were able to start the conversation on Hancock, and again, many things are happening now over on the Ross side. So
I guess my point, and I think you kind of, illustrated that in, a roundabout fashion, is, this district, this downtown district, has always been set up for, economic development. Because I think everyone agreed and still agrees to an extent that what we had, and I heard a lot from residents downtown, in the past was not working. Right? There was not an attraction. There was not I want to go to Quincy Center and just have an experience, quite honestly. And I think that as we continue to progress, some of this is happening now. And there's no doubt in my mind that folks will go and check out anything that's new. I have a young family, right? And we always want to go check out something that's new, right? The task is going to become, and this is over time, like how do we get them back, right? So the thought process may become that if we provide an environment, because this particular region in the United States is an attractive place to live, so if we provide an environment for folks, to live, and hopefully, raise families and ultimately stay here, probably more in a single family home, then, essentially, I think we've, accomplished what we set out to do. And we do have, some momentum. I do want to just point out, because I think it's so important that some residents out here this evening, I'm here to listen in the dialogue, and, I've had a conversation or two prior to my conversation with you, and, it's just important that folks stay engaged, and these are a lot of people that live here. And I understand sometimes, when you hear like big stage development, folks get a little kind of jiggy about it. And, the thought in my mind is, how do you protect the existing neighborhoods, which is a completely different conversation than what we're talking about now. But my point is, when we view development like we are tonight, we're viewing it in a zone, a district, however you'd like to refer to it, that has been set up to accommodate development, to ultimately recreate a different experience for the city of Quincy. Residents here and residents forthcoming. I had shared this with you at the break. I went back and revisited the URDP 4, which essentially gets into a financial plan as to, not so many words, how will we pay for this? And part of it is the sale of land. So they look at, right, what do we have to dispose of, the Ross Garage and the Hancock lot. And they essentially put a value in that document of $9.8 million. So if we're considering disposing of roughly a quarter acre, is that what essentially we're talking about, square footage wise, this evening?
Yeah.
Right, for $1.9 million, that gives us a gap to hit that target of $9.8 million, right? And we have 3 parcels. We have R1, which we're talking about tonight. We have R2 and R3 yet to be determined. So we have to make up essentially, $7.5 to $8 million. And you feel, and no one's a predictor of the economy, right? Yes. Do you feel that we're going to have the pipeline momentum to hit that bogey so that we can essentially finance this?
Yes, I do, and I think that $9.8 million on that side of Quincy Center, it's an estimate. I would point out that absolutely all future development on that site is going to be subject to land disposition by this council. You'll be able to determine, as you have with this current project, what the value of the process is, and you'll be supported because all future parcels will also have to have an independent appraisal, as the Foster appraisal gave us for that site. Important to note that, right now that's R1, we talk about R2 and R3. There's flexibility. There could be 2 smaller units instead. There could be four sites. But I think what we're trending towards is the 3 sites on that side. And I took an opportunity to also speak a little earlier to the representative from RKG, and I said, "Do you still feel comfortable about that?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "That lines up with what we have." But there are a number of factors, and I want to be very clear. Land disposition. Many of you are very familiar with what's going on with LDC. There may be some exchanges of land where we take some of their land and they take some of ours. So every factor of land disposition is before this council going forward. And every piece of land that will be disposed will be independently appraised. So we use 9.8 as a projected number. I think we're still comfortable with that number. Obviously less the proceeds of the current project. So I think that, we're at about 2 there, so we're at 7.8 between the 2 other projects. I think that's certainly in the ballpark.
So it's a great transition into my next question. I would invite Mr. Samoran up to maybe join you at the podium if he'd be so kind. And Craig, thank you for your,
Mr. Seymour.
Doing great with the names tonight. Thank you for your back end work, upon the follow up from last council meeting. And, councilors, hopefully you got that email that showed what the current snapshot of the diff was. I know Mr. Seymour at the time was confident that we had sufficient revenue coming in to essentially cover our expenses, and I think he's illustrated that through that handout that I circulated to everyone. One thing that I was kind of wondering, Jim, and the only reason I asked you to stay up there is because I think you were the interim CFO at one point, right? You've worn about every hat in this administration, and when you showcased to us that essentially we were net positive, I'm just going to use round numbers, about $1.7 million, right, in the black for FY17. Right, so we have $1.7 million above and beyond what we needed to pay our bills with the current bonds that are issued in downtown. Over above the debt. Right. My understanding, Jim, and this is the part I don't know, I don't see Mark here, otherwise I would have asked him, but any surplus revenue that comes from the district essentially circumvents itself into the general fund, correct?
Yeah, that is what has happened for many years. As you know, that monies from the district have already been going into the general fund for many years. And at one point, the council wanted a definitive change in the accounting, which was done, where all different revenues go into a separate diff account that can be identified clearly. But that money, as we go forward, there will be monies that will be, of course, assigned, if you will, to pay down debt when we go from bands to bonds.
So, with that in mind, any surplus revenue that's in a sub-account that exists inside of the general fund, am I on track so far? Right? Any surplus revenue from the district that finds itself in the general account.
It could, if there was a need to transfer those monies.
So my question is, it kind of alludes to what Councillor Liang was saying. We know that essentially we're going to have to service debt continuously downtown, right? They also have an understanding roughly of where we're going in terms of dollars spent for a parking garage.
Yes.
And we also know that in order to service that part of the debt, the way I see the deal being put together is we're going to have these anchor tenants. We're essentially going to sublease a lot of these spaces from that garage to basically make sure we're covering our bets on that garage.
Yes.
Would it not make sense to kind of escrow that surplus that we have now, $1.7 million, into a separate account within the DIF, just in terms of in case we didn't hit our numbers.
So the monies that go into the diff account right now, what you're suggesting is that they'd be bifurcated into a sub-account within the diff account itself.
In the account we came up with a shortfall. I don't know. I don't know the answer. It was just something that came to mind.
Yeah.
Finally, under the legislation, the way it's set up in the regulations is that the diff incremental revenue can be used for debt service or for the administrative costs that go along with it, but it's really at the will of the council as to what to do with it. If you want to take those excess diff funds and put it into a kitty for future expenses in the diff district and for the downtown, that's your prerogative to do that with.
Because otherwise it comes back to the general fund and it gets certified as free cash, right? I mean, it becomes part of the free cash certification.
When it comes out of the diff account, if it's not spent for debt service or administrative expenses or earmarked by the council, then it can flow back out into the general fund.
So could it not be used as a risk mitigation tool inside of the diff account in the event? I mean, would that be advisable? I don't know.
Yeah, it would be often what we recommend, and financial advisors recommend to cities who are setting up diff programs, is that to take some of those excesses and put them aside because you're going to have unexpected costs in the future, or you're going to have more projects come along that you need to have that cash on hand to be able to work with. So back into the general fund and allocate it out again.
You could do it that way, but if it's in the general fund, then it becomes susceptible to free cash certification every year, right? If it's kept in an account within the diff, then it
stays in the diff account, yes. And I misunderstood you. I was thinking you were asking whether the diff account should be bifurcated. The diff account does not go back into the general fund, so I didn't know if you were saying we could set up, if you were, a reserve within the diff. And again, I would defer to the auditor whether that is necessary. If it stays in the diff account, it does not go back into the general fund. What I was trying to determine is whether you were suggesting that it goes from the diff account, and then within the diff account you had a separate account for, say, contingencies. Yeah.
Recognize the auditor. I'm just curious, like where the. I don't want to get too far off track, but I'm just thinking in terms of a risk measure.
Yeah. Currently, right now, what happens is a few years back, I believe the council voted on setting up what they call a sinking fund. So at the end of each fiscal year, we get a letter from RKG, or the finance office does, about what the revenues were for that particular year. That part of that revenue goes towards the debt service payment. The remaining bit of that revenue, even though it comes into the sinking fund, at the end of the fiscal year, that fund gets closed out, and that money has been the last few years, because I believe it's only been happening for 2 years now, goes back into the general fund as general fund revenue. And then it gets closed out at the, it gets closed out, and it does drop into our free cashes. We look at our revenues that were received.
So maybe that's an enhanced way to mitigate some of this risk, is potentially about reevaluating that policy. I don't know. I was just sort of thinking.
No, it's been anticipated, as you know, Councillor, we're converting this debt at this stage.
Right.
The 10-year bans are now rolling. So the anticipation is there'll be other monies that will be required because our debt service will rise. So the anticipation is that money would stay in the diff account. And
so there will be essentially a shift in policy.
Well, I believe that's the case. I would really need to sit down with Mark myself and make sure that that's been discussed. But we have to anticipate a diff debt, which we do every year. We get a report from our KG. So
I'm not worried about us hitting our number. I'm just trying to think out loud. Is there better ways to be doing things, knowing that, right, we're going to be assuming more debt via the parking garage? It just helps maybe eliminate some of the unknown.
Well, again, the additional diff costs, or the additional diff borrowing that is going to be necessary to go forward will necessitate higher debt payments as well. So that will all be considered as we go forward. But as far as the policy on whether the excess DIF revenue could move back into the general fund. That's a discussion I would certainly entertain and certainly be happy to bring forward to Mark and the mayor's office.
So back to the project. Thank you very much, Craig. You know, we're talking about roughly less than 14,000 square feet, right? What is the total land size of that lot?
It's approximately north of 5 acres, closer to 6.
Okay. Yep. I thought I remembered that 5 acres. That's why I asked the question.
The last meeting, there was somebody with a calculator suggested that it was 6% of the actual available land was the 13.5. But as Council Liang pointed out, when you add some of the easements, it changes that number somewhat. But that's really.
I mean, again, I know it was very colorfully illustrated in the last meeting that it's not a large piece of the actual public land because we're going up, and that's how we're getting density. So we think about, or I think about anyways, the total land that we have at our disposal, and the fact that this is less than 14,000 square feet, and the hope that it does become an economic driver that, right, momentum breeds momentum. So I heard it here said this evening, if we do nothing, we get nothing. But, it is my intent to continue to move forward, with progress in the downtown. But again, I just think it's important that we're talking about a district that was set up for development. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a land area. It's less than 14,000 square feet. And I think, to me, this is what kind of grabs my attention. We're talking about a project that's roughly going to put out, is it 124 spaces, 126 spaces?
126 spaces.
Call it 600, 650, or 700 spaces to be determined later. We're talking about anywhere between an 18% and a 20% guaranteed stream of revenue to help offset the debt that's going to be created from the parking garage. That's important. So we are mitigating a portion of that risk by knowing that we're going to have, a determinable stream of revenue from this particular project. Right?
Yes. Another piece that has been a little quiet on it, and every so often I like to bring it back to the forefront. The development program has been anticipated to add density to an area where there was very, if you will, small buildings in the downtown. The downtown district was not generating a ton of tax revenue for the city. But another factor that I think goes undersaid is that when you add, as you said, 78% of the west of Chestnut project is now leased up. When you start to look at these projects as they go through, it also puts citizens living in an area that was largely industrial and, if you will, office space, maybe not the best and highest use, and some retail. But now you have eyes on the street. You have citizens living in these buildings that are eyes and ears. They are vibrant. There's better lighting in the downtown. There's more activity in the restaurants. It creates a better environment. It becomes a safer environment. And I think that's a big piece that everybody has to continue to remember. When you add people to the mix down there, you could go through there, and Mr. Geary gave great testimony that he couldn't figure out where he was going to eat until he found a seat. But I think it's important to note that when you are going through that district, you pick right up on what he was saying. Great restaurants, activity, more citizens living there. The investment, eyes on the street, people walking their dogs, people pushing strollers. This is what we're seeing in Quincy Center, which we had not seen for years. So I think that's important from a planning perspective, that we are, I think, vitalizing and injecting people into the downtown, which is one of the most important things that we're accomplishing with this.
Yeah, agreed to that. And my final point also worth noting is, as we continue to realize this growth in construction and in people, etc., that we take that new growth and pass the savings on to the customer, pass the savings on to the citizens in the form of, when their tax bill hits. I think, as I like to think, there's the inconvenience that comes with construction. And I understand home values go up and all that stuff, which is all good. But some of that savings, how do we manage the money and ultimately help positively impact, the ratepayer at home? So with that being said, as I mentioned, I think momentum breeds momentum, and I'll be supporting this evening. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Cain.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. This has been a very interesting debate. I'm sorry that I missed the last meeting. I know that there was some lengthy discussion that took place there, but I do want to first thank Mr. Geary for his world-class professionalism and responsiveness to all the questions from every single person on the council. Don't give me those looks, Palmucci, just because you don't have those words. Okay. But in any event, this has been very interesting. I came in here with very mixed emotions today, just because I feel like we are sandwiched in between, some interesting things that are taking place in Quincy, sandwiched between what was recently a tax increase, which I know has been a very difficult thing for citizens and residents and taxpayers to swallow. And so, when you see new flashy things that come before us, and I fully agree with my colleagues to my right, that we do need to keep the momentum going. We've seen some very important steps taken already. But on the other hand, I also agree that there does need to be a rebate of some sort paid back to the taxpayer. They need to see some value for this. At the same time, we do have residents that want to see a downtown improved. And far be it from me, as we went through the URDP amendment number 4, I certainly don't want to be a person that holds up this progression. But I do expect more. I think that, in the absence of what was the master plan and that master developer that is no longer here, no longer in the picture, the market has totally changed. At one point we were once looking immediately at the downtown area, is now broadening into greater Quincy. People are looking at this city as a destination, and I think we should be, instead of just waiting for people to come to us, I think we should be going out and attracting them, and I think we're fully capable of doing that. I'm happy to see some of Quincy's finest participate in this, but I also want to see more competition. There are no options that we're presented with tonight. This is only one project. There's no option B. This is a 115-story, 124-unit project. And, I would like to see options, and I know that we can generate them. As far as I know, this was a publicly bid project, and this seems to be the best way forward. And it is a little difficult not being at the helm. We are presented with the facts that we are, and we need to make decisions based on how we interpret them, how we feel, and how much we trust the people that are making those decisions. And, I very much, after all that we've gone through, especially over the past year in making these changes to the URDP and making this deal go forward, I trust in the capabilities and the decision-making of you, Mr. Geary. So I thank you very much for putting this forward. But again, Quincy's growing up in many ways. We've seen home values, at least assessed and otherwise driven by the marketplace, increase exponentially over the last 5 years alone. I think the median home value has gone up 25%. That's incredible. We're growing up, and some of these pains are really difficult. And it's really difficult also trying to assuage the fears of the residents who've lived here forever. But if we want to grow up, we need to be making new friends. So that's just what I want to hit home tonight, is that I don't want to sit here, I don't want the administration to be sitting and waiting for people to come to us. We need to work harder to attract more, because this not only should be a place where people can live and eat and play, there should be some more commercial activity down here. I want more businesses, and I don't think we're doing a good job at that. But thank you again. You have my time back. Thank you.
Councillor Palmucci.
Thank you, Councillor Laforest. I'd like to make just a couple comments, and then I have some questions that I'd like to ask you. But I'm going to make the comments first so that nobody. What, are you going to take a recess? I don't know. You all right there? Okay. Better that way if you can't hear me. But I'll ask the questions after I make the comments because I don't want anyone necessarily to respond. So at the top of this comments that I was writing down that I wanted to make, I wrote the subject is things I don't like. And it's about the project, it's about the process. And as Councillor Finn had said, and that's kind of what got me thinking about it, is that this isn't our project. This isn't our proposal. This isn't our agreement. This isn't our deal in terms of how it was negotiated, how it was developed. What Councillor Cain just said couldn't be more accurate in the sense that this is a binary decision for us. It's a yes or no. It's not a, well, we'd like to paint a different shade over here and do something a little bit different over here. No, this is a yes or no. It's a binary decision. I have trouble with that. And I think that, you know, as Councillor Finn said, you know, if I were directing the ship on how to do this, I might have done it a little bit differently. But that's not the case. This is what we have in front of us. But I just want to, for the record, say a couple of points of things that I have issues with in the way in which this was done. One of which, again, raised by Councillor Cain, is why not invite and encourage the best and brightest from anywhere and everywhere to design our downtown, to say, this is what should go here, this is what could go here. I would think we would be better served with future land use decisions, at least for public land, obviously, that this council would consider for disposition, of an open RFP process. I don't believe there has been an RFP process. There wasn't on this particular site. And the mayor's addressed that, Mayor Koch addressed that and said no one else was going to build a 15-story building. And perhaps they wouldn't, but what else would they have built? Our only comparison here was a 15-story luxury apartment building or, you know, a 48-unit stick-over podium. I have to think that in the great sphere of development and architecture and design, somebody else would have had another idea, and I would have liked to have seen that. Maybe this would have been the best, and perhaps it is, because I'm not suggesting it isn't, the best deal that would have come out of that process. But as I've learned in being a city councilor, a lot of good comes out of the process, regardless of where you get in the end, and whether or not you want to go through the process. It's always better to go through the process to see different options, and then when you arrive perhaps at the same final destination, you feel as though you traveled further and you learned more through the process. And I think as we go forward as a government, we owe that to the residents to cast a far net for designs, for ideas on how to develop the city. And certainly that's not in any way meant to disparage Peter O'Connell. I mean, I think he's, you know, as Ian said, he's the best and the brightest that Quincy has. I just think moving forward, we need to see what the best and the brightest of anywhere and everywhere has. And that not doing an RFP process, I think, also plays into my next thought, which is the fact that I can't get over the fact that the city is the master developer, and we have never had a discussion about that either at this body or in public, that the city of Quincy is the master developer. There are things I think that cities are good at, and I think there are things that cities are inherently bad at, no matter how hard they try or how much they try in terms of doing the right thing. And I don't know that any city can be a good master developer, especially a city of our size where we don't have a redevelopment authority. We have an overworked, understaffed planning department who does a fantastic job on a daily basis. But I don't know that the city should be the master developer. And that's a discussion that we have never had, again, at this body or with the public at large. When the Streetworks LDA was presented to the council in its formation, before we voted on it, there was a public process, a very robust public process where where the model was taken from neighborhood to neighborhood, and the players were all involved and there to answer questions. The mayor's staff, the development team, making the proposal, and folks could really go and they could ask questions, and they could participate. Now we have public hearings. We call them public hearings. When we open it up, we gavel it in. Okay, public hearings. Anyone who wants to come up. It's not the same to me. One, people don't show up. I think you have a community meeting. You take the debate to somewhere that's closer, to somewhere that's more intimate, where they don't feel like they have to get up. They know they're on QATV. They speak into a microphone. I mean, where they can just be with their neighbors and the principals and ask questions in an informal way. I think that is a good process. I commended the mayor when they did it before, the administration, and I would urge them to do it again. That didn't happen with this, and maybe because it's too small of a thing to do on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis, perhaps, there may be reasons for it. But I think the more we involve the public, the more input we get from the public, again, the better project it would be. And lastly, as it relates to the URDP, this is yet another project, I think, that just really shows that we are not putting the URDP in practice. We spent countless hours up here talking about the URDP, debating the URDP. The URDP is the plan. It's our goals and it's our values in writing so that everyone knows when it comes to the downtown, this is our values. This is what the city of Quincy, based on public meetings, based on public hearings, based on countless debates, this is our values put into writing. This is what we want to see transpire in the downtown. This is what we want to see created, and this is how we want to see it created. This will be, should it move forward, get approved. This would be the fifth project, 2, 3, somewhere around there, in the downtown redevelopment zone, the district. It doesn't reflect what we've all agreed upon is our values for downtown, namely workforce housing, affordable housing, housing that folks that you want in your city, nurses, teachers, firefighters, police officers, those kind of housing that can be afforded on those salaries. That's what we're talking about, workforce housing. We're not talking about, again, people without jobs, people that have no income. We're talking about regular people. We're talking about the middle class. We haven't seen any affordable housing in the downtown projects that have been approved, and lo and behold, this project doesn't have any affordable housing either. We simply aren't following it. We're not holding people accountable for the parking. We're not holding them accountable for the affordable housing and workforce housing, and we're not holding them accountable for public art. This is just another incident of, and we're told, you got to get it going. You're the first one. You got to do this. Every time, and I've made this argument every time. The next guy's not going to take a different position than the guy before him. You gave this to Weston Chestnut. You gave this to Peter O'Connell. You gave this to this one, that to this one. Why would the next guy come in and get in line when he knows the city in the past has been willing to give up on these values and give away these things, negotiate away these things that we have said, these items that we have said make for a vibrant downtown? And it's just one more step on the slippery slope of creating a downtown that doesn't reflect our values. So, when I say that not in a way to, kind of to be a jerk about it, but that as we move forward, I'm going to keep banging this drum because I think it's important that we all keep it in our forefront when we're moving forward, when developers are coming forward with projects downtown. I think it's important that we draw a line in the sand and say, okay, at what point are we going to actually require them to pay into the parking fund? We've always discussed that, is that every development downtown is going to pay into the parking fund, the shared parking. And now we're getting to the point where we're talking about how much the parking is going to cost, and we don't have a fund yet. There's been, multiple projects approved. We don't have a fund yet to tap into. we're going to have to tap into the taxpayers' fund. And then with the expectation that in the future, we're going to hold developers accountable to pay into the parking fund when we haven't done so yet. So, and again, I understand there's been reasons why developments haven't been held to that standard thus far. I hope we're quickly approaching the end of that to where we are going to hold developers in the downtown area to the standards that we have set out in the URDP. That's our plan. That's our values on paper, and we need to start living up to what we all agreed the downtown should look like and the values we want to see in it. I want to ask a couple of questions, if I could, perhaps. First to you, Jim, Mr. Shea, if I could. I want to talk about the lien language that Councillor Finn had talked about, and I think you kind of addressed earlier too. That language was not in the LDA prior to. So let's use it. Let's use it when it got to us. So when it was submitted to the council, that language wasn't included.
The language that's been added since.
Correct.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Say that again.
It's basically clarification language. I think that it wasn't just I think it had to be clarified, which agreements are coming back to the council. It shouldn't be subject to interpretation. In some cases, it was, and they agreed to clarify that.
Okay.
Use restrictions, those were they were there, but the use restriction was basically, as I said to the team early on, I said I think it's certainly a residential use restriction, but it's got to be more than that, because we've got to incorporate this high-rise concept, because that's the rationale for all these other incentives.
And that's a protection against a year from now the land transfers from the city's possession to the developer's possession, and I say, well, yeah, market just doesn't dictate. We're going to do 48 units, five stories thick over podium, and then we look at the contract. You can't do that. We look at the LDA and say, oh. Well,
I was less concerned about that, and it's really the lender, the mortgagee protections. The lender comes in and they always say, hey, I'm putting my money into this. If things go bad, I've got to get it back. So the traditional position of a lender is to say, if it doesn't work out, a use restriction, I want to wipe that out. I want to go to the highest and best use that'll allow me to recover my, get my loan repaid. And basically, they can't do that. There was a provision, it was just throughout the agreement, but one of them I think you may have pointed out a month ago or whatever, that there was changes, that there could be changes made to reasonably accommodate the requirements of a lender. And that's arguable. I mean, someone could say, yeah, that's fine. I mean, if they tried the high rise and it didn't work, then why isn't it reasonable to throw that out? Well, that was taken out.
I have no recollection of that, but I talk so much there's bound to be some value in it somewhere.
I don't know if it was in here, but yeah.
I'll take the credit. That's fine. Yeah, Council Liang probably sent me a note.
I knew it was one of you.
So, the way I kind of approached this was that the Streetworks deal, and I hate to use the term deal, but the Streetworks agreement in the LDA, it worked. Unfortunately, it worked to protect the taxpayers. I say unfortunately because we only found out it worked when it fell apart, the development and the design. But it worked in a sense that our goal was to risk little and get a lot. And so with that mindset, that's how I looked at this particular LDA, which is what are we risking? What are we getting? The risk versus reward, but always making sure that, we're not we're not bankers, we're the government. So the risk can't be much at all. It's, regardless of how great the reward is, the risk has to be minimal. We have this fiduciary obligation to the residents of the city and the taxpayers to efficiently use what resources we have, and disposing of an asset is, land is probably one of the biggest kind of tasks we have in that fiduciary obligation. So, long way of asking you, in terms of, and maybe it can't be compared to street works because it's apples versus oranges, but in terms of the protections provided, are you comfortable that this agreement offers a relatively comparable layer of protection for the taxpayers in the event of a material default?
It's a different deal, yes, and I mentioned earlier some of the risks of the street works. It's a very unusual structure where they're paying more than normal taxes, which is fine if the market would bear it, but if it wouldn't, and that would go off into the future, and they defaulted or declared bankruptcy and rejected that agreement, then you've already floated bonds based on an income stream that you no longer have. Now you fall back to ad valorem taxes. So that's one example. In this case, I think, again, I don't know why they didn't do that deal. I mean, I think if I were to wonder, that might have been one of the reasons. It may well have been that it didn't pencil out paying whatever it was, 150% or maybe more of what normal taxes were. But at least, that was their risk when they couldn't bring that forward on our terms.
Right.
That is, you can't, if you're going to do it, you can't get out of it because we've got 30 years to pay these bonds back. In this case, I guess the risk is you're incentivizing a project that is not what the quote market wants, and so but I think you're protected if it doesn't work. That you're not going to get you're going to either get the benefit of your bargain, or you're going to get your land back, or you won't even sell your land. I think
which is about as good of protection as you can get in terms of
yeah, I think so.
If you don't get what you're going to get, if you don't get what they say you're going to get, you get your land back. I mean, that's
correct.
Is there any other protections that you think are necessary in this agreement that we could implement to better protect the taxpayer of the city and our interests in it?
I think basically it's incremental. I mean, this isn't going to close tomorrow. I mean, you get this like a purchase and sale agreement on a house. You're not going to be signing that deed until a lot of other things happen. And, one of the key things is the economics of that garage. But basically, it gets the thing moving. You'll be there at each step of the way.
And that's always been, the garage has always been this. Even with the streetworks arrangement, the garages were always this kind of thing off in the future that the financing would have to work on, and we'd all figure that out.
Well, if you're in Manhattan, garages are easier. Or even, now downtown Boston. I worked for Massport, the seaport, and that World Trade Center garage is doing pretty well. It didn't always do well, but it's doing very well now. But generally speaking, garages don't pay. They're just basically something you need, and how do you get there? With a minimum exposure and without giving up, too much of your land. I mean, you want to have ultimately a certain amount of density in the downtown. If you allow something really that's not very dense to go forward on the first project, you're going to build around that for the next at least 30 years, because that's how long these buildings live. So you're subsidizing that's a bad word on my part, but you're basically incentivizing the height and the density so that you'll have more flexibility going forward and be able to attract more density like that in the future if the market will support it.
Thank you. I don't know if the questions are better for you or for Mr. Geary, but I kind of wanted to walk through some what ifs just to, again, just kind of check some boxes here on if there's not performance on the other side. of this disposition agreement. So like, what if, before construction, first of all, what's the entity taking the property?
I don't know, but it's not, you're relying on the entity.
Right.
Okay?
So if the entity sells the land, right, before they start construction, what happens?
Well, first of all, no, the agreement, the LDA will be recorded, and it's not allowed. It's not allowed.
Impermissible to sell.
Impermissible.
All right. And what about during construction? 50% construction's half up, and they want to sell. They want to liquidate. Can they do it at that point? What happens then?
They have to have a certificate of compliance. I have got a few of these going on to make sure I don't mix my deals up. But certificate of compliance, that is completion before they can sell.
And if they attempt to sell after 100% completion, what rights does the city have with that?
I think once it's completed, they can sell.
And what about the new owner? We don't have any. Do we have any sign off on the new owner?
That part Bill would know better, because that's not a disaster scenario from my point of view. The building's built and in accordance with the agreement, and at that point I'm less concerned who owns it from your point of view. But again,
it's all relative, I suppose. It's who's buying it, and who's running it. And the reason why I ask that is because our fortunes are tied with this, as it's presented to us in this binary yes or no decision. Our fortunes are tied to the success of this business, of this business venture, in a way. I mean, the better it does, the better the city of Quincy does in terms of revenue. So if it's brought in by a notoriously poor operator that has a bad history of purchasing buildings and then running them into the ground or something, that would be bad for the city.
Right.
So do we have, Mr. Geary, do we have any recourse in that event or any control over?
Well, fortunately, we have lengthy experience. We, the city, has lengthy experience with Mr. O'Connell and the projects that he's constructed over the last 30 years and have operated and continues to operate here in the downtown area. That's one of the reasons that the mayor designated him.
No, I understand, but I'm saying he tries to, if he goes to sell it, because it's not him. I mean, we keep talking about Peter O'Connell but it's not him. It's a legal entity. At some point, something could happen in which the legal entity is no longer run by Peter O'Connell. I'm sure there's a myriad of ways in which that could happen, and I'm not going to contemplate them, but there is the kind of outrageous scenario where he is no longer the principal. Someone else is the principal, either because of a sale or because of a transfer of assets in another way within that LLC or that holding entity, and then we're dealing with a whole different person. So while I may trust Peter O'Connell, I don't know who the next person in line is. And if, say, they tried to sell to someone that the city found to be disreputable.
There is a section called capital events, and there are guidelines in that section as to what would occur, and I think I may have mentioned that the city would have a number of protections, and to be quite candid with you, I haven't taken a look at them this past weekend, but there are a number of protections, and the city does reap some benefits if it were to agree to a sale, including a percentage of the net sale. And I believe
but that's the key, though, I think, is that the city agree to the sale.
Yes,
that's the key.
Exactly, that is the key.
So
if the city agrees to the sale, as I mentioned, there's an acceleration clause so that any of the fees that were due to the city would automatically be accelerated. And incidentally, that's triggered if the city agreed to either a sale or a refinancing.
Okay. Now, the other scenario, what if something happens in terms of financing, and I think this is, we've all kind of discussed it in passing, and it's a distinct possibility given the current market situation, but an inability to start. What happens with that land if this thing never gets off the ground, if the bird never takes flight?
As Mr. Shea mentioned, there's a number of triggering events. And first of all, the city will not close on the transaction until they have their financing in hand. And 90 days before the financing in hand, there will be an agreement as to the progress of construction, what constitutes executing and prosecuting the construction project itself. That's entered into 90 days before that is to occur, the closing is to occur. So those will be one of the documents we will be working on should the council approve the project.
Okay. And what if, again, this is the section titled What If. What if there was some sort of material default during construction of the garage? So I know the plan is to build them concurrently, I think, the garage and the project, but obviously the project has to be on the leading edge of even a concurrent development there because you need the parking for people before they move in. So, well, I guess that would make it the other way around. But so what if there's, the point is, what if there's, the tower goes up, that's fine, but there's a problem with the garage. What happens? Well,
that's one of the advantages of having the redeveloper, Mr. O'Connell and company, involved in the construction of the garage, because it is in our mutual interest and his self-interest to ensure that the garage proceeds. They need the garage, number one, to get the financing, and number two, when they complete their project, to accommodate their residents. So they have a vested interest in ensuring that that occurs.
And lastly, what if in the scenario there's poor management? Does the city have any recourse in terms of, again, because our fortunes are tied to the success and the profitability of the venture, does the city have any recourse in this to address poor management of the asset?
To be honest with you, Council, I have to take a look.
Okay.
Every question that's posed to me, I go through in my brain all the iterations, all the give and take over the course of the last several months, and so I don't want to give you an answer that may not be the correct answer at the moment, but I'm sure that one way or another we would have recourse, notwithstanding our confidence in Mr. O'Connell, and we understand and we foresaw the prospect that that may turn over, and Mr. O'Connell actually acknowledged that in terms of just his own circumstances, personal circumstances. As you know, it's a family business, and so there are other members of his family, including his son and others who will be coming along, but he has declared his interest in having his family entities hold on to this property.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Geary, and I'm filled with a sense of, I'm not sure what, thinking of you wandering around Quincy Center at night, just looking into windows of restaurants. I don't know if that's our best advertisement to eat downtown, but nevertheless. Thank you, Chairwoman Laforest. For me, this has been one of the closer calls, I think, that I've had to make up here with this vote. It's like a 49-51 kind of decision. It's a tough call. I essentially come down in favor of supporting it because I'm supporting the idea of this cautious optimism for our downtown. I've always supported the vision for downtown that's been put forth by the mayor's office since the beginning. When Mayor Phelan first began the process of the downtown revitalization, When Mayor Koch carried that forward with streetworks, I supported that LDA with streetworks because it protected the taxpayer despite the bold and ambitious arrangement that the Mayor Koch had negotiated at that time. And when streetworks, as we discussed, when streetworks fell short, far short of the goal, the city and more importantly the taxpayers lost nothing in the deal. And again, you call it a deal when it's not so much a deal, but an arrangement. The streetworks LDA protected the taxpayers' interests. I'm proud of that fact. I think through that process the public process, through the deliberations, the hours of deliberations up here, I think we made it a stronger deal. It was negotiated as a strong deal by the administration. And I think that was proven true when the worst case scenario occurred and we were still in a strong financial position moving forward, having protected the taxpayers. When this LDA for the Hancock lot came to us, I don't think it fully protected the city and the taxpayers in the same way that that prior LDA did, but I think it does now with the addition of the language that's been added, the liens that have been put in place, the clarification of some of the language that's been put in place. I think it now does protect the taxpayers in a similar way that the streetworks LDA did. With the land coming, it doesn't get any better than if the developer is unable to perform, the land comes back to the city. It doesn't get any better than that. We're risking the land, and if it doesn't work out, it comes back to us. The worst case scenario, like we have in streetworks, means we get the land back and we start this process over. In that instance, the city, the taxpayer are protected. We get our asset and our value back. In the best case scenario, the optimistic scenario is that the project actually happens, which I think is a big if, given the market conditions and everything we know that's happening. But in that best case scenario, this acts as a catalyst for the downtown's growth. And they end up paying well above the amount that they would have if it was simply taxed at the standard rate. And while much has been said that there's no property tax being paid, they're paying something different, which is at a minimum what they would have paid in taxes, and at a maximum much, much more. As I said, I'm going to vote on this based on cautious optimism. The taxpayer is protected in a worst case scenario, and that to me is the bottom line for whether or not this should move forward or not. And that's, for me, is the deciding factor. I think Quincy Center, and we'd all agree, Quincy Center needs to be that economic engine that drives our city's success in the future. We've all signed on to that notion. And I think that this LDA is a step toward that future that we all want and we all work so hard to achieve. So I'll be supporting this, and I would urge my colleagues to do the same. Thank you, Councillor Forrest.
Thank you, Chairman Laforest. Just want to thank you and all my colleagues for the robust debate over the past several meetings. Also thank Mr. Geary and the Planning Department for doing such a thorough and stellar job. Mr. Shea, our counsel, for helping us navigate through this process. And at this point, I would just like to make a motion to approve or recommend this for approval.
Thank you. And seconded? Very good. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councillor Cain. Yes. Councillor Croall.
Yes.
Councillor DiBona.
Yes.
Councillor Finn. Yes. Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Hughes.
Yes.
Councillor Liang.
Yes.
Councillor Palmucci. Chairman Laforest.
Yes. 29 voted in the affirmative. Here in committee, we will be now recessing the ordinance committee to bring this matter back out into the city council meeting this evening. But actually, you're right, we will not be recessing. Motion, meeting adjourned. All right, so we will call back into session the regular city council meeting. We left off, Madam Clerk, at the approval of previous meeting minutes. Before you have the January 9th meeting minutes, Is there a motion to approve? Motion approved by Councillor DiBona, seconded by Councillor Harris. On the, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. The ayes have it. Great. Madam Clerk, communications and reports from the mayor, other city officers, or city boards.
I do have a communication this evening. I have an open meeting law complaint in regards to the December 5th, 2016 City Council meeting on the tax rate.
To the city solicitor for his opinion, and then perhaps refer to oversight as well.
Very well. All right. So, motion to refer to, or just actually a referral to oversight and to the city solicitor. Is there, all right, all those in favor? Any discussion? Okay. Very well. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. In unfinished business in the preceding meeting. Okay. None. Reports of committees. Councillor Laforest.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. This evening, we just concluded the fourth meeting on Council Order 2016-267. That's the order relative to the land disposition agreement for Parcel R1 in the Hancock Parking Lot. As we have been working to stimulate development in our downtown area, we have the next phase of our project presented before us. It received a unanimous vote in committee. We had a great team put forth by Mayor Koch. I want to say thank you to his counsel, Mr. Bill Geary, our Planning Director, Mr. Jim Fatseas, the counsel for the City Council, Mr. Jim Shea. We had a stellar team with Mr. Seymour and RKG, with Pam McKinney, everybody providing us information. Not only did we have 4 discussions of this ordinance committee, we had countless phone calls and emails and meetings offline with everyone doing their homework to get us to where we are this evening. With that, Madam President, I'd like to move positive recommendation for Council Order 2016-267.
Okay, motion to approve by Councillor Laforest, seconded. Is there a second? Is there a second? Seconded by Councillor Harris. On the motion, Madam Clerk, to call the roll.
Councillor Cain.
Yes.
Councillor Croall.
Yes.
Councillor DiBona.
Yes.
Councillor Finn.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Laforest.
Yes.
Councillor Liang.
Yes.
Councillor Palmucci.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
9 members.
Okay, still in Ordinance Committee, we have some traffic. In Ward 1, Council Order 2017-010 to install handicap parking at 26 Stewart Street. I move positive recommendation.
Positive recommendation by Councillor Laforest, seconded by Councillor Palmucci. On the motion, Madam Clerk.
Councillor Cain. Councillor Croall. Councillor DiBona.
Yes.
Councillor Finn.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Laforest.
Yes.
Councillor Liang.
Yes.
Councillor Palmucci. President Hughes.
Yes.
In Ward 4, Council Order 2017-011 to install a do not enter on Joyce Road northbound, intersecting with Quarter Street, restricted Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. I move positive recommendation.
Motion by Councillor Laforest, seconded by Councillor Palmucci. On the motion, Madam Clerk.
Councillor Cain.
Yes.
Councillor Croall.
Yes.
Councillor DiBona.
Yes.
Councillor Finn.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Laforest.
Yes.
Councillor Liang.
Yes.
Councillor Palmucci. President Hughes.
Yes.
In Ward 6, Council Order 2017-012 to install no parking on even numbered side of Alstead Street from Quincy Shore Drive to Terrell Street. I move positive recommendation.
Motion by Councillor Laforest, seconded by Councillor Harris. On the motion, Madam Clerk.
Councillor Cain. Councillor Croall. Councillor DiBona.
Yes.
Councillor Finn. Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Laforest.
Yes.
Councillor Liang.
Yes.
Councillor Palmucci. President Hughes.
Yes.
9 members.
And our last one this evening in Ward 6, Council Order 2017-013 to install no parking on the south side of Alstead Street from Quincy Shore Drive to 55 Appleton Street. I move positive recommendation.
Motion by Councillor Laforest, seconded by Councillor Harris. Madam Clerk.
Councillor Cain. Councillor Croall. Councillor DiBona. Councillor Finn. Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Laforest.
Yes.
Councillor Liang.
Yes.
Councillor Palmucci.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
9 members.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Laforest, for all your work on the Ordinance Committee. Thank you. Thank you. Next up is presentation of petitions, memorials, and remonstrance. Councillor Liang.
Thank you, Madam President. So, I know it's a very late night, but I do want to wish all of you a very happy New Year. This Saturday is going to be the Lunar New Year, so this Friday is Lunar New Year Eve. And this year is going to be the year of the rooster. Every year, you know, it celebrates cleaning, family, a lot of feasting. Eaten a lot of whole fishes in my days, never got to eat in the eyes, which I still won't do. But, you know, in Quincy, we actually am very, very proud to be from this city and celebrate in this city. Every year, the Quincy Asian Resources nonprofit is heavily supported by the city and heavily supported by their residences at their festival. And again, this year is going to be at North Quincy High, February 12th from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. They've shifted it, and they're now going to have a food festival at night. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I really encourage folks to go. You're going to be able to see the dragon dance and the lion dance. And it's funny, I talked to my mom not too long ago about what that looked like back when she was in China growing up in her tiny little village. And she had told me that the reason why, you know, money is given at the Lunar New Year. So if you're not married, you receive money. If you're married, you've got to give money out. So that's why I'm not getting married. But no, I'm just the symbol behind that, the symbolism behind that is she said that she would put together little packets of uncooked rice with little coins and little things of candy and food, and the dragon would come around their village and dance, and they would take that, and that's sort of your offering to, you know, sort of these higher powers that you can go into the new year clean of any burdens, clean of any wrongdoings that you're doing, and really just sort of embrace the prosperity and the joy that's to come with it. So I really do want to wish that all upon you as well. I want to say Gong Hei Fat Choi, and I hope to see you guys on February 12th to celebrate with the culture. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Liang. Anyone else? Motions, orders, and Councillor Palmucci, sorry.
Just a quick one. I forgot a bunch of things on my list of things I don't like, but I feel like it's, you know, I really lost that opportunity. But on another note, I know that Councillor Hughes and Councillor Cain are working hard on the hospital transition, and I don't want to take anything away from you guys. I know you're working with the neighbors in Fox Rock to ensure that the use isn't inconsistent with what the neighborhood wants and expects. And I know you guys have had a community meeting and will continue to do that outreach. I wanted to, from a larger perspective of this body, I just wanted to inquire, and you can answer afterwards, Mr. Walker, on behalf of the administration. At some point, I expect that the financial arrangement relative to that transfer of the asset and reverter clause will come before the body. I mean, I read about it in the paper, but at some point, it's a financial interest that the city has. It clearly has some value, so I would expect that will come before us by way of at least a presentation. I mean, again, we got a little bit of information about what was happening. Read about it in the paper. I know the councillors are impacted, and these residents are impacted, are intimately aware, but being further removed, but still having a fiduciary obligation to the city, I think it would make sense to get some additional information for the whole body. But that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Palmucci. Yes, Councillor Croall.
Thank you, Madam President. It's with great sadness that we take a moment here this evening and, you know, reflect on the passing of Arlene Page. Miss Page was I think she was a lifelong Quincy Point resident, a very, very active member of the St. Joe's Parish, member of the Solidarity, and you know, I get over to the arrangements last week, and Miss Page raised a wonderful family in Quincy Point, all who of which were in attendance, and I could tell you it really was like a celebration of life, just people coming together and recognizing the impact that one woman, you know, had on them, and it was really just a you know, powerful you know, thing to be a part of, and you know, our thoughts and prayers obviously with the Page family as they continue to go through the grieving process. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Croall. Anyone else? All right, motions, orders, resolutions. Scheduling of committee meetings and public hearings. Anything. I think we're well scheduled. We have a regular council meeting Monday, February 6th, and then we'll be meeting again, just for everyone's reminder, Tuesday, February 21st. So after this Super Bowl, is that on Monday? Oh, please don't expose my ineptness on the Super Bowl. Okay. At this point, it would be a great time for a motion to adjourn. Yes, thank you. Councillor Palmucci, all those in favor, aye. Thank you very much, everyone.